I think that I got to a point where when I was younger, I made emotional arguments. And as the internet came about and as I got older, I was able to get data and make logical numeric arguments and give people a way to actually see this thing in the full frame of what it actually means. And so when you look at my articles, you're going to see numbers and stats and datas and charts so that you can see the guy next to you that might not be able to do that same thing in terms of structuring his argument is saying something real about his struggle and his issues right now. That black male that you know, your son, your brother, your father, he's not just ranting about some kind of issue that came about in the 20s or the 40s. He's talking about something that's very real and very apparent today.
Interesting. So let me ask you this. Let's talk about you for a second. I want to go. So you said you grew up in you said in Crenshaw, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And what high school did you go to?
I got bust out to the Valley. I went to James Monroe Law Magnet. Actually, funny enough, I got a newspaper behind me. I was in the paper. I was Johnny Cochran in high school.
That's
LA
funny.
Times.
That's funny. And I asked that because I was just talking today with a friend of mine named Dominique Reese, who is a financial expert who graduated from Crenshaw High School, and she went to Princeton. And she was the first graduate of Crenshaw to go to Princeton. And one of the things that Dominique talked about, and I think, and I'm curious to know if you have any insights on any of this, but she talked about just the trauma of being a survivor of what happens to so many young black people and particularly young black men, in areas like that. Not just there, but I mean, I'm on the south side of Chicago. I see this kind of thing every day. Just that trauma of dealing with the violence on one hand, the abuse and addiction on the other, and then dealing with the police on the other hand. And she said literally when she graduated from high school, she said basically she said a few of my girlfriends and I went to college. A lot of them did not. Most of the boys were either dead or went to prison, and a few of them did okay, but a lot of them went to prison. Can you talk about sort of what you might have seen as a young black man, kind of growing up in areas that were kind of ground zero to this mass incarceration epidemic, and how it affected you?
Well, speaking candidly, I was just with my one of my closest friends. He went to Crenshaw High School. His name's Laren Mary Say. Went to UCLA with me, and he was telling me about about some of the dynamics that were very different from my high school in terms of if you were late on a bus, you get a truancy slip, and they make you then go to superior court. This is your introduction to the mass incarceration system. I got a chance to do summer school there's two black dominant schools in all of Los Angeles. They're still predominantly black. That's Crenshaw High School in Dorsey. I got a chance to do summer school at Dorsey during my 11th grade, and it was vastly different from what I was experiencing getting bussed out on the magnet buses to the Valley. So I definitely can see that structurally these schools kind of prepare you to be in a certain facet of life. And I think that in a lot of ways we have to challenge that dynamic. I mean, a system that allows for truancy to be punished at the superior court system really has to be questioned, especially amidst the whole greater system of mass incarceration, to ask, why is this happening? Why can't my kids just talk to the principal?
Well, it seems like in a lot of cases we are running a lot of schools just like prisons. My friend Christopher Emden, who is an educator who does really good work. We went to Detroit and we spoke at a high school in Detroit. Then we spoke at a prison, and he said, B, I can't tell you how many ways these two facilities were very similar to one another. And you almost have to wonder if there is a systematic objective to use one system to prepare a segment of society for the next. I mean, in your article, you kind of address the fact that has consistently been an alarming percentage of black men going to prison, and almost as if this is by design, that it takes a policy decision to make this happen. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I actually, I like to pick other people's brains. There was a great piece that preceded mine called The Politics of Black Lives Matter. And what she showed, what the author of that showed, and it's actually in my piece, is Germany, Finland, and the U.S. between 1965 and 1990 all saw their crime rates triple. Well, Germany left their incarceration rate flat. Finland dropped their incarceration rate. The U.S. increased theirs. So what you have to really start looking at and understanding is that these are policy decisions driven by economic issues. I recently became aware of something called prison gerrymandering. I don't know if you're familiar. Familiar, Boyce? Okay,
Yes.
so say there's town A next to city B. City B has, let's say, 10,000 people, and it takes 1,000 people to get a local House of Rep or whatever. Town A only has like 500 people. They don't have enough people to have a House of Rep. Well, what you do, prison gerrymandering, is you build a jail in Town B.
Oh, right,
You
right.
build a jail in Town B. Now, you got to fill that jail up. The people in Town B don't want to go to jail. So what you do is you incarcerate people out of the city and you move them into this prison. Now, as they move into this prison, their vote moves with them, but they can't vote anymore. So now Town B has usurped voting power from City A. So like when you start to deal with that dynamic of now 500 people are voting for, let's say 1,000 prisoners came out of that city into that town for 1,500 people. These are the dynamics that we're seeing right now. We're starting to see dynamics where people are not being honest about the use of criminality, both historically and in present day, to continually keep a system that's been in place since the beginning of America. Peonage, slavery, mass incarceration.
Now I hadn't, you know what, I hadn't heard it referred to as prison gerrymandering, but I'm glad you brought it up because I had heard about the politics behind it in terms of just the, having the bodies but not actually having people there that actually have an equity stake or the ability to actually dictate what happens in their town, right?
Yeah,
But you have these small towns that they love their prison inmates because that's a source of money, a source of political power, all kinds of other things, and it almost seems to connect so directly to the fact that there was a time where we were considered three-fifths of a person, and people wanted, they wanted the benefits of having us around, but not the consequence of actually giving us the ability to control our own destiny. I want to ask you about something, man. And this is a personal thing for me in the sense that you said something about somebody that I consider to be a friend, Janks Morton, but I'm glad you said it because I think your point of view needs to be heard on this. And one of the things Janks talked about extensively in the film Hoodwinked, and I'm a part of that film and Mark Lamont Hill and stuff like that, and I agreed with what Janks was doing, but I think that it's important to hear your point of view on this. In the film, Janks talks about that age-old statement that people like to make that there are more black men in prison than there are in college. So Janks, using pretty accurate data for the most part, comes up with the conclusion that that's not true. That there are more black men in college than in prison. It's almost like one of those horse races where it's neck and neck and it's a photo finish. But he's able to prove it using Department of Education data that that's not true. You have an issue with that, right? And your issue is that it shouldn't even be that close, right? Or at least that's part of your issue. And I'm going to let you use your own words to describe your concern there. But I wanted this point of view to be heard. So can you tell me kind of what your concern is about us celebrating the idea that there might be more black men in college than in prison?
well, let me say this. We as black people, we as black men, we just need to support each other. So I'm in no way just not taking a shot at anybody else. But I feel that in a lot of instances, we persevere so much that we just hook on hope, and so we'll look to things that aren't positive to be positive in the midst of catastrophe. And so, as an example, you see that here because without a baseline, college prison ratios are irrelevant. So, I mean, I think in a lot of ways you could play with the numbers because if, right now I have it at 750. Those are the people behind bars, jail and prison. But if I had probation and parole, we up to 1,000,005. So on the other side with the college numbers, it was 700 before they added University of Phoenix. And the problem with that is that these for-profit colleges aren't the best thing ever for young blacks because a lot of them are not finishing the school and they come out with high debt loads, even higher than the nonprofit schools. So that's the first problem. But more importantly, I mean, the ratio should never even be close. And I think that what I'm showing you in the data set is it's not close for other people. I use one chart. I don't know if you have the article pulled up, but I kind of wanted to just show the group. But I used one chart where I show white women against black men, and that's not in any way to take a shot at white women as much as to use them as a ruler or a baseline for functional. There's like 58 million white women, only 60,000 in prison and jails, 8.5 in college. I mean, when you look at it, that's a group that's about we're 20%, black men are 20% of that group, but we have 10 times the prisoners in the same cities, in the same communities. Those are policy decisions. And I think that the danger of celebrating this college prison ratio and college outpacing is that we give policymakers an out not to deal with the structural realities of the prison issue. That's all that matters. Is the prison issue is so exponentially high, it should never happen. And it should never really happen to people that are descendants of slavery.
Mm.
You're spinning the same wheel. I mean, when you look at it from slavery to peonage to now the mass incarceration following the crack epidemic, it basically teardrops. I have a chart that I've done on HuffPost where I show the actual timeline, and like I think that I do. Let me say this: I celebrate the thought process of positive thought, but at the same time, I fear the danger that it leads to, which is where we're at now. That everybody's disadvantaged somehow. So let's just give everybody a chance not to have a disadvantage. No, black men are structurally being put in a box, a steel box, and it's about yay big and yay tall. And until you fill that box, you don't understand what they're going through.
Well, I think that's. I'm going to say this, and if Jank sees this, I have to apologize, brother. But I agree with you. I think that what you're saying is a very important and a very important point to make. I understand why Janks made his point. I think that the point being made by Janks, and I think we're all friends, we're all in agreement here in terms of wanting what's best for the community. That's why I think this conversation is important to be had. But I think Janks was making his point because he doesn't want the doom and gloom narrative to always shape the conversation. That you can say something about any positive trajectory that you have, even if you're not where you want to be. But I like where you're coming from as well, because what you're talking about to me comes off as something that might be defined as a Malcolm X ish kind of appeal to what true equality looks like. Because for black folks, we are so accustomed to counting from the bottom. To
That's
say,
and that's it. And let me just say this to you as well. There's consequences for that, and I feel them. See, like you can't have a group that has no inheritance and then take their working age men and put 10% in prison or jails. It creates societal dysfunction. There's less people to get haircuts, less people to open up burger shops. Like there's a consequence that comes off of that, off of that reality that people are not dealing with. This is the shadow of mass incarceration that's just as, let me not say just as, it's important because it affects us all that look like quote unquote prisoners. We have to overcome an element of you might be criminal. And an element that nobody else deals with, no other group. And I think we become so accustomed to it that we don't even understand. I say this, and I said this to you earlier. Oftentimes we see black scholars that have never had hands-on like experience with the criminal justice system speaking to it, and somebody would say, "Well, you don't need to go to jail to know about crime." Well, you should at least have been a prosecutor or maybe a public defender or talk to some public defenders, because I think that if you do, you start to understand the dynamics that I'm speaking to are very real. And the thing I wanted to say is, I think that what happens is that black men carry so much of this every day, they don't know they carry it. Most people don't know anybody else that looks like them that went to jail, like that, especially the ones that went to college. We will know two, three, four people, maybe even two in your family. And I think that we don't understand nobody else is dealing with that. We think, oh, it's white people that have people in jail too, not the ones that went to Stanford, not the ones that went to UCLA. It's a different kind of white person that has that issue. And so coming back to the main point, no slight on his statement. I just don't think it's the time for it. When you talk about like I said to you earlier, one of the highest prison rates ever recorded was 851 per 100,000. It was during during apartheid for South African males. 851 per 100,000. Young black males, working age black males, is between 20 and 39. It's 10,000 per 100,000 right now in prison or jail. That's 10 times that rate. And we're going to celebrate. I don't want to celebrate like going to the University of Phoenix right now.
well, I think I think it's a great point you're making, and what I really see, unfortunately, is it seems that sometimes integration and that mindset, it causes us to delude us from our purpose. We get to the point where someone says, "Well, look at all the black people over there who are struggling," and someone says, "Yeah, but look at you and your friends who are doing well." right? And so you got this black middle class and upper class that isn't as directly impacted by the mass incarceration epidemic, so they have a hard time connecting to it, right? So their answer is, well, don't break the law and you won't go to jail.
Yes.
Right? That seems that becomes the conclusion. Which I think is very dangerous. Can you kind of speak to that in the sense of leaning on your experience as a prosecutor? You've seen tons and tons of cases go through. Um, what are just a couple? I know it probably too numerous to name, but what are a couple kind of systematic things that happen to say young, otherwise productive, law-abiding young black men who make a mistake that can lead to an increased likelihood of them being in prison versus, say, the white kid who is on his way to Stanford?
Well, I'm gonna just say this: that when we look at the primary things that are affecting black men, the bulk of the reason that these black 750 are in prison, we're looking at child support, we're looking at suspended licenses, and these things put you in jail. Child support, suspended licenses, and low-level drug offenses. So the kind of thing that happens is, a lot of people don't understand the level of punishment that was going on with the crack epidemic. And it's funny because it parallels what we saw during peonage. There was something called the pig law during peonage. They caught you with a pig, they gave you a felony and 5 years. Well, during the crack epidemic, we actually saw that for 5 rocks, you got a mandatory five federal. And so, like, 5 rocks. So, like, if you're young, you're black, you're in the middle of Reaganomics, there's no jobs, and you make that mistake. And young people do make that mistake of all races. You ended up with a penalty that was not the equivalent of the crime that you committed, and that deeply affected the rest of your life because now you have a felony for the rest of your life. And this is, like, I guess you could say, one of the ways that's really obvious that you saw black young men affected, and it's basically dragged into today.
I think it's very interesting, and and I know a few years ago, the first book I wrote was called "What If George Bush Were a Black Man," and I enjoyed writing that book because it was fun, just sort of going through a mental experiment and saying, what if you took a white guy, like, say, a George Bush, for example, who who isn't he's not a hardcore criminal, but he does break the law every now and then. He's not the laziest person in the world, but he's not the hardest working person in the world. He's not dumb as a brick, but he's not the brightest bulb in the tree, and he does make some mistakes along the way. What if you make him into, say, a poor black male? And I think my example was growing up, saying the Cabrini Green projects in Chicago, which existed at the time. And it's interesting how, if you look at that data, you can see where for so many young black men, the margin of error is so thin. The mistakes that a white kid on a college campus can make two or three, 10 times in his life, you make that mistake once, your life is ruined. And I think a lot of people don't talk about this sheer torture of prison. I mean, the human rights violation that occurs once you are behind bars. We make jokes about things like, getting raped in prison. That's not funny. That not only traumatizes physically and mentally the victim of that assault, but you're looking at individuals coming out with STDs that are going to infect black women and things like that. So you've got a
And let me
lot. Oh,
And
go ahead.
Boyce, just to what you just said, I mean, that's part of the reason, part of the thing that has happened to us. I mean, Kevin Hart got the new movie coming out with Will Ferrell making fun of jail. You got Life with Martin and Eddie Murphy making fun of peonage. I mean, you have this system where they create this calm amongst our people about what's going on with them. And somebody would say you're overstating it, and I would say I'm understating it. You don't see other groups joke about the most horrendous things that are going on about them in the past, let alone about what's going on with them today. And I think that inside of that joke is a way to deal. But the problem is that as we, as a race, deal, young black men carry the burden. And so and when I say that, people will say, "What do you mean?" I mean, when you look, that's the group going to prison. So mass incarceration, I'll say this outright, is not an American issue. It's a young black male issue. And then you see some young brown males as well, meaning Latino males. Outside of that, people start getting more normal rates, white men, then down, and then so I mean, I think that until we acknowledge and get honest that it is a young black male issue, we won't reach any kind of solutions. And then the question becomes, do we really want to reach those solutions, or do we need these people to go to prison so that they create jobs?
Right, and that's the last point I want to ask you about. we've gotten to this point where we have created a balloon economy based on slavery, which is what it is. Not just This is not just a metaphor. This is constitutionally accurate, and you know what I'm talking about—the 13th Amendment and the loophole
Yeah.
that says, right. I don't need to tell you, but for those who are watching, there is something in the Constitution that says that you can be made into a slave if you are convicted of a felony. They've been using that for a couple hundred years to get us back into slavery. So you've got this balloon economy built off of this slavery.
Hey, and for those that haven't seen what Boyce is saying, let me recommend that you go and you look up on YouTube "Slavery by Another Name." Great piece by Douglas Blackman. Lawrence Fishburne narrates it, and it'll explain everything for you about this actual system.
Very good. Yeah. So make sure you watch that. And so I want to ask you, man. So, in your opinion, given that there's so much money being made from this slavery, I mean, corporations are making billions of dollars from this free labor. If we got to the point where they actually want people to go to prison, what if we never ever get to the point where those horrible lawmakers in D.C. Decide to change the laws to make them more equitable? What if white folks never do the right thing? What do you think that African Americans should do? Black legal professionals, black concerned citizens. What do you think we should do in the event that they never ever decide to do the right thing?
Well, I think the first thing is we have to get informed, and that's one of the reasons that I write what I write. So first is for me first, then my social circle, so they can feel and understand what they're dealing with and not feel so much depression. There's a reason black males feel so depressed, because they feel like they need to buy their mama a house. They need to take care of this, that, and the other. And it's like, first thing, take care of yourself and get your peace of mind together. So my answer is I think that we need to get informed about where we stand. And that's one of the things I wanted to do with this, with the chart that I did, the other chart, which was this one here. And I wanted to show this data in the sense of other countries, to show how irrational it is. You're talking about one side, black men are 18 million people, and the other side, all those countries together have like 1.5 billion people, and we have the same amount of prisoners. So until we get informed, we then can't deal with, these are not criminal choices. These are not choices because these people are criminal. So then we have to ask, well, then why these people are going to prison, and be honest about it. And I think one of the problems right now is that lack of honesty about that point, which is the pivot point from these are not criminals and why are they choosing these people? And then looking at it historically and coming to the real answer. Then you come up with policy. Like I said, I've written like 20 pieces on HuffPost, and I've written it from everything from slavery to economics. And I think that one of the things that we have to really do as a people is get more pride about our history and more understanding of how it affects our present. And as that happens, we can ask for more policy. And that policy starts with an apology for slavery. But
Well, I think that that's an excellent point, and what you say about the black men dealing with stress and depression. It almost makes me think about what Tupac said in a song where he was saying, you probably know this, no more hesitation, each and every black male's trapped, and they wonder why we're suicidal running around strapped. And that was in the song
yeah,
Only God Can Judge Me. And and that really that resonated with me. I was in my 20s at the time, and I remember just thinking about that, and just even in my environment, I didn't go to prison, but I saw plenty of relatives who did. Lots of black males that I was close to destroyed by prison. My older brother, I saw him go to prison at 17, 18, and he wasn't right for the next 25 years. He
and
eventually.
what's funny about that, boys? That
Yeah.
sounds like when you watching Slavery by Another Name, they talk about peonage. Because basically they were putting these black men in jail for vagrancy, and then they would get so many days, and then they would sell them to companies like U.S. Steel, and that's how Alabama was built. But the thing is, they got treated worse than slaves because they're not property. So they would basically die mining steel as prisoners for vagrancy. Vagrancy meaning not having a job. That's what we're seeing today. A lot of the things that we're seeing today is that these men are not economically, there's no economic place for them to do things. And people will say, yes, there is. Walmart don't count. I'm talking about real substantive jobs like Los Angeles. And I have another piece. This is actually a two-part piece for everybody. The second piece is going to be how the box of mass incarceration that trapped Black America. And it's really going to talk about a more in-depth analysis of this box of this mass incarceration. But a lot of people don't know, like in Los Angeles, in 1980, 80% of the garbage men were black. 20% were Latino. That's the kind, and the thing about a garnishment in 1980 is with high school diploma, you could own your own house, have retirement, you could provide for your family. Those jobs don't exist for us anymore. So then the question becomes, what happens to our sons? What happens to our brothers that graduate and don't go on to college? Where can they fit? Where can they be part of our society? Are they only fitting in prisons? And then somebody would say no, and I would ask them, well, then what are they going to do? Shovel ready jobs? I'm not seeing those. At least not go to us.
Well, I agree with you, and that's actually one of the reasons that I consistently tell people you've got to teach your son how to have his own business. I believe every black man in America should at least know how to have a business, even if you can't build one, even if you have to give a little money and partner with some other people. We have to build our own economy.
You're right. I
That's
mean,
the only solution.
did you see the Harvard Business Review article that came out last week?
No, which one?
It was crazy. It was crazy. So Harvard Business Review does this article, and they were supposed to analyze the black 1%, but they couldn't even analyze them because it was only 12 families, too small a sample. So then they went down to the black 5%, and they found that their number was like 350,000 to be in the top 5% of black America. Like nothing. I mean, not to minimalize it, but like that's for white America, that's the top 30% to give context. But all of it's real estate. It's all real estate. So like those are not businesses. So like effectively, what Harvard's study was showing was that there aren't black businesses anymore. So then we're the ones that need to hire our own people first and foremost, because we're gonna look past all of the supposed shortcomings and see that these people have potential. But if we don't have no businesses, we can't hire our own people.
Well, I tell you, man. What I love about your approach, man. I like your style, Antonio, because I think you understand the urgency of the situation that we're faced with, and also you're not you don't have much room for bullshit. You understand that we are in a situation where the line has been drawn in the sand. We are at war. As a people, we cannot be polite about this. We can't be politically correct. We cannot worry about what white people think. We have to build and sustain our own, which means being just as hard on this system that is oppressing us as we are on each other when it comes to elevating our game. I don't think it could be one or the other, right? It can't be it can't be an entirely liberal solution. It can't be an entirely conservative solution. This pick yourself up by your bootstraps and everything will be fine. Well, unfortunately, when we built things in the past, the law has allowed whites to come along and take it from us. I mean, that's the destruction of Black Wall Street, things like that.
There was a great article on that last week, Boyce. There was a great article about how everybody doesn't understand when people left and ran from lynchings and went to Chicago. Some of those people had property that they just left in the South, and that property was then taken over by white people. So like you're absolutely right. People don't understand like it didn't happen in this pure sense where it didn't happen as simple as everybody thinks it happened. But you're absolutely on the right path.
That's right. Yeah. I personally think we have to walk away from just relying on anybody to come. I don't believe personally, brother. I don't believe the cavalry is really coming if we don't become the cavalry. I was thinking about, for example, the Civil War, and I said the Civil War is fascinating to me because here you had you know the history. I mean, it started in Kansas, bloody Kansas, where you had tons of white people moving out there who were either adamantly for slavery or adamantly against slavery. They either loved it and were making money from it, or for some reason ethically they were against it, and they were killing each other in order to to claim their territory, to make Kansas into a slave state or a free state. And I asked this question openly to people on Facebook. I said, okay, so you had white folks, for good or bad, right or wrong, you had certain people that were willing to die to protect what they thought was theirs, good or bad. I said, how many of y'all are willing to die for what you believe in? How many of y'all are willing to really fight for your liberation? Or how many of you are tempted to cower in fear and go along with the status quo, even if you know it's wrong? And the answer to that question really defines the shape and trajectory of the future of your people. If you're not willing to put it on the line for future generations, then you are committing yourself to a policy in which you will survive, but you will remain conquered and enslaved. That's just the bottom line. That's what I'm seeing here. I'll let you get the last word on that. Tell me what you think.
I did a piece called "Slavery, Shadow, Reparations, and the Cost to Build a Nation," and it kind of went to a similar point. The gravity of where Black America is at economically is just something that policymakers, educators, families need to really get a grasp on. And I think that you're absolutely right that people have to start putting the trash to the side, putting all the games and the gimmicks, the Xboxes, the NBA, and Housewives to the side, and start really looking at their situation, their brother that's in prison, their lack of retirement, their need for aid and assistance to send their kid to college, and say, how did that happen when my family built the wealthiest country the world has known?
Well, I love it, brother. I think that your analysis has been extraordinary, and I want people to go read your article, man. It's on it's on. We have it on Your Black World as well, but also you can read it on Huffington Post. That's the version that's in front of me. The title is "The Black Male Incarceration Problem is Real and It's Catastrophic." It's written by Antonio Moore, who is a former Los Angeles County prosecutor. He's a graduate of Loyola Law School and UCLA. So he's a smart brother, not because he graduated from UCLA. I think UCLA is a symptom of his genius, and not the cause of it. So
Come on, don't hate on LA. It's 72 degrees out here.
I
You
know
already in the teens.
I am a hater. I'm in Chicago, man. I don't think we've had 5 degrees in 2 weeks, but and he's also a Lakers fan, as you can see from the purple. So you've been repping
Even
the
though we
Lakers, huh?
losing, even though Kobe's out, you always got to push for the Lakers.
There you go. There you go. Well, I love it, man. Well, thank you, man. It was great. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I want to talk to you again in the future at your convenience, of course. And I appreciate your knowledge and I appreciate your good fight. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
All right. And everybody who's watching, make sure you go check out Mr. Antonio Moore. And I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World. And for all the other lawyers that are out there that see what's going on in our system, don't just go chasing the money. Chase something bigger than the money. You've got the expertise that our people need. And I love to see more black attorneys on the front line like this brother right here. So a lot of us can do it, and we need a lot of soldiers in this battle. So please join the fight. Well, until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.